Please lie on your back on your mat. So we've had a pretty wild sort of a day with lots of arms and legs going in all directions. But we've thought about them being connected into the center of ourselves. So what effect has that had as you lie on the floor now? If you take a moment to scan yourself, notice, how do your shoulders lie? Do you have a sense that the two sides of your back make a symmetrical imprint on the mat? Are different parts of your pelvis touching the ground than you would normally sense? And you have some sense of how your legs are lying. And maybe you could notice which parts of you are involved in your breathing. So without making anything different, just noticing at the moment, after all those things we've been doing, you're more aware of movement in different ribs or different parts of your trunk. How's the air flowing in and out now? And then would you come up to sitting? Have your legs bent in front of you. And you may need to remove your sock on your right foot. I'm going to ask you to take your right index finger and hook it between your big toe and your second toe so that you create a connection there. Just notice how much grip and grab do you need. Can you just make a hook and leave the rest of your arm and your hand fairly soft so that you can lift your foot into the air? So it's right hand, right foot. What's it like to lift your foot? Now, we've been exploring over the past couple of days what connects to what, how do we need to shift weight, what helps, what hinders. So is this just something that you do with your arm? Is there some way that your leg can contribute to the lifting? And what do you do with the other hand that helps you to have a sense of balance? Because one of the things that we've discovered today, and probably in the other couple of days as well, is that if we don't feel safe or balanced, then all sorts of muscular activity starts to kick in and interfere with other things. So once again, bringing your finger to your toe, just beginning to lift your foot a little bit. How can you do that in a way that you can feel as though you're safe and balanced? And where else could you contribute to the lifting of the leg? Is it just your arm and your leg involved in this? Or can you do something in the middle of you that makes it easier? How high do you need to lift your foot to make those experiments? Do you learn more when your foot's way up in the air or when it's closer to the ground? Okay, and then just put your foot down, pause for a moment. So Zoran mentioned this morning the idea that we can't do contradictory things at the same time. So if you bring your right finger back to your right toe, begin to lift your foot, particularly pay attention this time to where do you need to shift the weight on your pelvis to make your leg as light as it can be. You've had lots of practice at thinking of your pelvis as a bowl that can roll in many directions. So if you let your weight come a little over onto the left sit bone, does that kind of free up the right leg to lift a little bit? So what's it like if you shift your weight to the right sit bone? What happens to your leg? Okay. So come back to whatever it is that makes it easy for your hand and your foot to lift away from the floor, and for the rest of you to feel involved but safe. And leave it, lie down and rest for a moment. Come back up to sitting. Hook your right index finger into your right big toe. And once again, begin to lift your foot a little bit. Rest on your left hand, just enough to give you that sense of safety and support. And can you lift your foot just high enough that you can begin to take it a little bit left and a little bit right? Okay, now some of you have your left leg bent, some of you have it straight. Does it make a difference? What happens when you change the shape of your non-involved leg? Ho ho. Could it be non-involved? Not really. It's connected. And so as you take your foot left and right, what happens to your weight on the floor? Does your point of contact change? Does something change through the middle of you in order to keep your sense of balance? What happens with your breathing? You take a breath and flap your foot around a bit and take another one. Is there a connection, or are they independent? And leave it. Lie down again. And notice, what's the after effect of having done those movements? You're stuck. What would you do if your finger got stuck between your toes? We'd have to call the fireman. So just thinking back to the scan you did a few moments ago, has anything changed? Is there a kind of an echo of those movements left in your system? When Feldenkrais taught this lesson in Amherst, he spent a fair amount of it ranting at people who didn't seem to be able to sense the difference between working really hard and finding something that was safe and easy and comfortable for their system. And about this idea of trying to use the same muscles to do two contradictory things. So as you lie there, can you have both your legs bent, your feet on the floor, bring your left hand behind your head and your right index finger hooked into your right big toe. And what's it like to do that same movement? I'll call it lifting your foot, but that will be part of the direction it goes in. What's different? Now that you're lying down, does your foot come closer to your head or not so close to your head? If you use your left hand to help to lift your head towards your knee, does that make it more or less easy for you to lift your foot? And so what's the constraint on your foot going further away from your bum? Is it the length of your arm? Is it something in your leg? Something in your hip or your back? So if you think of not only your leg getting longer and straighter, can you think of your arm getting longer as well? Your left hand's lifting your head a little bit, which encourages your shoulder to move. Can you think of your shoulder blades sliding a little bit to allow your hand to reach further? Okay, and for some of you, you can get your leg pretty well straight. Others still have a knee, which is excellent. What would happen if, as you lift your foot and lengthen your leg, you began to roll a little bit onto your right side? So remembering the idea that we do things in small increments that are reversible, can you begin to experiment with lifting your foot, straightening your leg, helping your head to come towards your knee, and heading a little bit over onto your right side. Thinking that maybe each time you head in that direction, not destination, that maybe something understands a little bit more about coming along. Can you get a sense of where you're trying? And we spoke in the little group up in the back corner about how we all love to achieve things. There's a high probability that you are going to achieve a straight leg today, so you can be patient. It will come. The slower you get there, the easier it will be. So put your arm and leg down. Just let it rest. Sometimes awareness through movement's a little bit like planting a garden. You have to put the seeds in and water them a little bit, wait for the sun to shine on them. And after a few days or a little bit of time has passed, something starts to germinate. Our nervous system can make sense of our intention in a different way. And some new possibility begins to shoot. Sometimes that happens by resting and thinking about something completely different. Sometimes it happens by imagining that movement being really smooth and easy, even if it seems anatomically impossible at the moment. Anything's possible in imagination. And maybe it would be useful to create a mental pathway. So can you think of your left hand's behind your head, helping it to lift. Your head's connected to your neck, which is connected to your spine. And so there's a shape that's going to form. Your right hand is connected to your right foot, and it's going to lift. And as you roll to your side, your leg and your arm will be long and possibly even straight. The straightness doesn't occur until you're well over onto your right side. So make sure there's space in your image for that to occur. And you could experiment a little bit with different trajectories. Does your foot go straight out to the side? Does it go a bit more headward? And for those of you that are lying there very quietly and still, I assume you're imagining, you can now begin to reach down and pick up your foot and start to follow that imaginary pathway. If you think as you roll that you reach with your foot, you reach with your arm, and the miracle occurs. So can you bring your scientist view now and notice what's the difference in the shape through your body when you're on your side compared with when you were on your back? What's happening differently that allows your leg to straighten once you roll that wasn't so possible when you were on your back? Is there a part of you that's working when you're lying on your back that somehow lets go when you roll? Do you need to engage it again when you roll onto your back? Or can you roll back in the shape that you were on your side? Or like you were doing earlier, do you bend and then straighten again when you arrive on your back? Let it go. Rest again. So Feldenkrais tells us that when we're on our back, we might still be carrying some of the antagonism between our flexors and extensors. The muscles down the front of us that help us to fold forward, the muscles down the back of us that help us to arch and lean back. That when we're vertical in our environment where there's gravity and ground, we need to find a balance between those sets of muscles to hold us upright, to allow us to move around and stay vertical. Somehow, when we're lying down, when we have the support of the ground, when there is no pull backwards or forwards, they can both let go a little bit, and it's easier to find that shape where we can allow the leg to straighten. So sometimes doing things in a different context, in a different orientation, in a different way, allows us to discover an option that we couldn't quite figure out before. And then once we've experienced it in a different way, in a different place, then we can bring it back into the context where we want to have access to it. So once again, bring your left hand behind your head, bring your right finger to your right big toe. See what it's like to lift your foot and your leg, and this time begin to roll to the left. See what's different when you go that way. If you want to be able to extend and straighten your leg, reach with your foot, reach with your arm. Can you find the pathway of movement that makes that as easy as it can be. And then just notice where your attention is. Is it on your foot or your leg? Can you kind of widen out the viewfinder a little bit? Can you be aware of your foot and your leg, your hip, the shape of your back, what your head's doing, and what your left leg's doing? Is it helping? Is it getting in the way? How much of you can you have in your lens at any one time? Put your leg down, let it rest for a moment. Just notice if anything's changing in the way that you're lying on the floor. You allow your concentration to soften and rest as well. And then grab your right big toe with your index finger again. Can you roll over and put your foot on the floor on the left side of you? With your leg as long as it's comfortable for you to have it. Just rest it there for a moment. And can you now roll your pelvis a little bit backwards, as if you were going to roll onto your back? All right, you remember a little while ago, you leave your foot on the floor. You had somebody take your pelvis and just wiggle it back and forth a little bit when you were kneeling. Can you just do that for yourself? Just gently take your pelvis back a little bit and forward. Reaching with your foot, letting it slide back as your pelvis rolls back. Okay, and then roll onto your back, and a few times lift your leg, take it up and over to the right. Let it bend as it comes back and straighten over to the left. Has your head figured out how to join in, or do you still need your hand to help remind it a little bit? And let it go. Let everything rest again. Okay, bend your knees, hook your finger into your toe one more time. Bring your left hand behind your head, lift your head and your foot. See what it's like for your foot to go up into the air now. Is that changed? Is it easier than it was before? What's different? What can you do now that you couldn't do before? And can you put your head down on the floor and continue to do that? Have you managed to discover something about an organisation that you initially needed to use your head to help discover? Trying is okay occasionally, and then let it go. Come back up to sitting. Hook your big toe. See what it's like to lift your foot in sitting now. What's different? What has learnt to join in or to let go that wasn't part of that movement when you began? What happens with your pelvis? Is it rolling forward? Is it rolling backward? Is it rolling to one side? Where does it need to go to allow you to lift your foot, straighten your leg? And if you wanted to lift your foot, but bring your head towards your left knee, how would you do that? It's the right leg that's lifting, the left knee's the one on the floor. Your head comes towards your left knee. Yeah. That's it. Look at that. Linda can almost kiss her left knee. You know, there was probably a time in your life when you could do this, and you probably did it with a smile on your face and curiosity in your heart and no intention of getting anywhere particular. What would it be like to do it that way? And roll onto your back. Once more, just briefly scan what's changed in the way that you're lying on the floor. You sense different parts of your chest and your ribs involved in the breathing. Do you have any echoes or resonances of that movement left in your system? And then when you're ready, you can gently roll to one side, find your way up to standing. See what effect that's all had on your ability to walk. Just take a moment to observe, to notice what's changed, what's come up off the floor with you. Ryan's toes stuck in his finger again. And in the fullness of time, you can walk to find your socks and your bags and your home. Sleep incredibly well and come back refreshed, ready for more tomorrow.